This is the Colombia Calling podcast. I am your host, Richard McColl, here in Bogota, Colombia. Over the way, we have Emily Hart in Medellin. And our very special guest this week is Karol Lopez, who is in Bogota as well. We're going to be discussing something that is so far outside of my comfort zone, and that's the reason why we need to discuss this. We're going to talk to Karol Lopez, who is the founder of Las Fuertes. It's a foundation. It has a project at the moment in Isla Fuerte. They're in the department of Bolivar. And the idea is to lift up, or at least dispel the taboos surrounding, menstruation, the period, and other, female, what would you call it? Maturity, isn't it? Maturity, is that how I'd say it? See, you can already tell how far outside of my comfort zone this is. So welcome on the show. Welcome. That was a big gap there. Welcome, Karol. It's a pleasure to have you. Menstruation.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming on, Karol.
Thank you.
Yeah,
to
I think
you both.
there's something really interesting about the link between those two things. But let's start with the outlay, because I did a brief kind of sweep, and what I saw almost immediately is that Colombia is its own case. Those of us who are from other cultures, we grew up with a very different set of cultural understandings, right? Because menstruation is not just a biological event, it is a cultural phenomenon and a social one. So tell us about Colombia. What characterizes this phenomenon here? And obviously one can't generalize because Colombia is so diverse. So between ethnicities even.
I think it's really hard to make the case because there is so little information about the reality of the access of menstrual education in general. And it also differs in the region, like you said. So if you go to La Guajira, where the indigenous presence is very much more present than in Bogota, there is no way to compare how menstruation education access is available in La Guajira, for example, to Bogota. And even within Bogota, depending on the sector or the neighborhood that you're going to, it's also lived and experienced in a very different way. So before I actually started Las Fuertes, I did like a little research to exactly have a sense of what it was, the spectrum of access to menstrual education and experiences. And the information out there is very, very limited. There is no many studies. There is no much information about what it is. And that's exactly why that's not exactly why I did it. It's a whole life before this that I started this idea. But overall, what I can summarize it into is that the lack of access to menstrual education that is comprehensive is not limited by where you are geographically or your economic status, because it's the same. Obviously, the side effects of it are very different depending on when you are and your family and your social circle. But the stigma and the lack of access is very widespread, regardless of where you are in the country, where you are estrato 1 or estrato 6. It's just the consequences of that, how they unfold during the lifetime, right? And also this is widespread around the world. So it's not limited to Latin America, it's not limited to Africa. This happens absolutely everywhere. It's just that we are not aware of it.
You mention Africa, and I think that's the way we get to this, is that you did your Peace Corps, your service in the Peace Corps in Madagascar. Is this where you were sort of
Yes.
it revealed itself to you as that this is something I need to work on because of society there? I mean, I guess so, no?
Yes, exactly. So I had the pleasure and privilege to live in Madagascar for 3 years. I was a community health worker there, advisor, in a very small town called Kenjabatu in the southwest of the island. It's a population of, at that time, it was around 3,000 people maybe. And I had a lot of projects, but around a year and a half into my service, I started noticing that the girls really had a lot of chores, right? Like the gender roles were very defined, especially during the vacation times. So boys will go play, they will go to the field. They have a lot of freedom per se, but the girls didn't. So they stay a lot of home. doing a lot of household chores, taking care of siblings or little ones, where the neighbors or doing dishes. The list goes on and on. So one time I decided to create like a little summer camp to see, I didn't really had an idea what I was going to do, but I was like, I'm just going to create a space where these girls can come in, and I had some fun. And that's how I started it. And I worked with these girls for like a year and a half. So I was there for 3 years, and the first half of my service, I was completely unaware. And then the second half, it just opened my eyes to a whole different experience. And it was thanks to these girls. I had a group called Fikambanana to Vavimijuru, which means it roughly translates into like the group of girls that stand up, that they are proud of being girls. That's kind of like the translation. And it was thanks to them that I understood what happens when you are not in the privilege, right? You are not in the bubble. Because I personally never questioned, do I have money to buy the things that I need, right? I never questioned, do I have access to a bathroom, even though where I lived, my bathroom was a latrine, but I always had access to one, right? Mm-hmm. Where I had some privacy. It was completely different when I had to go on the field and visit another Fukuntani in the middle of nowhere where there is no bathrooms. And that's what I started to think, oh my God, how do the girls manage the menstruation, and women in general? And then from there, I started to realize, okay, so if they don't have the money, they don't have the access to water, clean water, a safe bathroom, because the schools don't have them. So they stay home. And if they stay home during the menstruation days, that translates to like roughly 4 or 5 days every month. And then if you combine that during the school year, that's pretty much 1/3 of the school year. So it just started, I started seeing all these things that had never been in my radar, because I had never seen that, or I never experienced it myself. And on top of that, talking about menstruation and the menstrual cycle in general is a huge taboo in Madagascar. It's humongous. Just the way that people refer to menstruation in Malagasy, which is the official language, is Fandimbulana, which means the taboo of the month, or the monthly taboo. So the word itself is very taboo, right? And you start seeing all the side effects of this. So the girls stop going to school. So the parents are like, well, if my kid is missing 1/3 of the school year, why am I spending money? Might as well she stays home and helps mom, or helps going to the field, or whatever it is. And then soon after, they will have to find a partner, because the family maybe can't afford having an extra kid in the household. It's just the ripple effect is way wider than we could ever imagine, right? And then you have the wanted unplanned pregnancies, and then so on. So yeah, but Madagascar was basically where I understood what happens when there is no access to education, when there is no access to the minimum menstrual products to manage your menstruation with dignity, when the school doesn't have the facilities for you to actually do it, and then from there on. So yeah, Madagascar was a life-changing in many different ways, and especially because it was inspiration to create Las Fuertes.
A lot of that you're describing is also true in Colombia. It's sort of funny that you went so far to see something that is actually happening in all sorts of places in Colombia. And also that link between menstrual education and sex education. Like you say, unwanted pregnancies, the understanding of the link, fertility, and the taboos around menstruation are quite linked to taboos around sexuality, right?
Right.
Right. So Isla Fuerte, tell us a bit about the particularities, kind of ethnically, culturally, of the context that you're working in there.
Okay, so widely enough, Isla Fuerte is very, very similar to Kianjavatu in many ways. The size of the population is very similar. The construction of the houses is very similar. Not for everybody, but some people still live in houses that are made of palm trees and like just natural resources, which is okay. Not to say that people that live in households made of bricks and cement are better. It's just different kind of lifestyles. but culturally and geographically is very similar to what I experienced in Madagascar. I say, I don't know the percentage, but the great percentage of the population is Afro-descendant or Afro-Colombians. There is some people that have migrated from Medellin or Bogota and live in the island, but the great majority are Afro-Colombians. And there is, I say, a good percentage of indigenous descent as well, maybe from Sinus or some other indigenous tribe that were in the territory years ago. The island is remote when you ask me how to get there. So when they are, oh, how did you get to the island? To me, it's just, I go down the street. But if you go from Bogota, you have to take a plane to Monteria. Then you can either take a taxi to Paso Nuevo, but if you don't have enough funds, then you take a bus to Lorica, and then you take a car to Paso Nuevo, and then you take a boat ride. And the boat ride can be anywhere from 20 to 45 minutes, right? So it's expensive. It is very expensive to get to the island. Unfortunately, they don't have running water. There is no, at some point we had electricity, but because of many, many issues, we don't have electricity right now. So some people they have to rely on generators, maybe by a neighbor. So you pay a daily rate. So electricity can be very expensive for you if you add up all your daily payments. Access to food is a little bit complicated as well, because unfortunately before agriculture was more present in the island, but it has shifted to more tourism. So a lot of the food is brought from the coast, right? And because transportation is expensive, everything is added up to the price of the goods. So comparing, if you want to do some grocery shopping in the island, prepare to pay a very hefty price compared to what you would spend on the coast. But then if you go to the coast and you want to do your grocery shopping, you have to add an extra, in dollars would be maybe $25 to $30 plus on top of whatever you're going to spend on your grocery shopping list. So the island can be very expensive.
Access to affordability is such a factor, right? For menstrual products.
Yeah. The health post just recently opened, I think about a year ago. For a long time it was closed, so they didn't have access to doctors or primary care. Now they have, and they have some decent, I guess, primary care assistance. There's only one school for all the kids, so it's combined from pre-K to 11th grade. But there is only one school for primary and secondary. So they only get half of the day studying. So high schoolers will go from 6 a.m. to around 12-ish or 1. And then the primary kids will go from I believe 1:30 to 5:30 or something. So they don't get the full day of the schooling in any other setting. So there is a lot of factors, and that make life quite complicated.
But because one thing that I wrote an article on menstrual justice, which I think is a kind of interlocking but not quite identical issue to the one you work on a few years back. And one of the things, and you can say this about lots of things about Colombia, arguably, but on paper, there are some great systems in place in Colombia, and certainly comparatively as a case study in the region, it abolished tax on menstrual products. The Constitutional Court did. What was it, 2018? Conform does subsidies for menstrual products. It was ruled that unhoused people should get free access to menstrual products. How much of these great on paper policies are reaching the communities that you work in?
None.
None.
No, I mean, I've heard
slightly foreseeable answer to the question. But...
Yeah. So I've heard of the subsidized by Confama, which is great. And we actually, when we have the funds, we kind of do that for the girls, the ones that are already menstruating, and we have the funds available. So we give them, okay, you get the choice if you want to get reusable pads or menstrual panties, and the ones that are ready to use the menstrual cup. Depending on the funding that we have, we are okay, you choose this product, then you have to pay this much, and then Las Fuertes pays the rest.
Yeah.
But that's just us, right? And my group is very small to impact the whole community. As far as tax on like menstrual products, yes, we don't have those. But when you think about women that have to buy pads per unit, so unfortunately, sometimes, I'm not saying all of them, but in some cases, they actually have to go buy the pad by the unit. So if you add that up, the price of units, you end up paying way more than you will pay for that whole pack at once. But because, you know, a lot of factors, and I'm just not going to say it's just pure lack of funding, it's just the way that they think, also how they live life on the daily basis is also represented in this way of like, oh, I have my 500 pesos or like 800 pesos. I don't remember the number right now. But if you add that up, they have, I don't want to say they don't know, but I don't think they are aware of how much more they are paying. And this is reflected in every single aspect of their lives when they are buying oil and rice. So it's not only the menstrual products. But
I would love to briefly pause on the menstrual products because I think it's a really interesting place to talk about cultural attitudes and taboos, and also about class and economic access, right? Because the cup, the menstrual cup, even in the UK, is pretty exclusively used by like middle class feminists and or hippie girls of a certain age, right? And this is, if you have running water and sanitation, the most cost effective and ecological option.
Yes.
And almost ironic then that it's used by people who actually could afford to just spaff money on tampons every month.
Exactly.
But there's also a squeamishness about the cup because it brings you into very close contact with your own body and with your blood.
Exactly.
Richard, do you need me to explain how the cup works? I don't want to like woman-splain at you, but I'm also not aware of what the level of knowledge among men generally is.
You're more than welcome to woman-splain me, but I actually know what the cup is. I actually know.
Okay, great.
Then we'll assume people do.
100% ahead. I also wanted to. I know you. I'm just gonna just jump in. I visit a school in Capurganá when I'm going up now in these next couple of weeks. They don't have a bathroom in the school. And so therefore,
that with the cup is not the vibe.
Yeah, but what do children do? I mean, this is a school, and of course they're between 9 and 14. The girls, 9 and 16 years old, I think. So what do they do? I mean, that was screaming at me when you were saying this about the lack of, let's say, ability, the lack of having a bathroom or any dignity. If your school doesn't have a bathroom, then we're really
so
basic.
The choices that I'm thinking they have to do is I either miss school that day, right, or the days off when I'm menstruating. I either use the product for much longer time than I'm supposed to. So let's say they use just menstrual pads. They are supposed to be changed every 4 hours, but they are going in a full day of schooling, right, and they don't have a bathroom. So probably, I'm guessing, they have to use it from the time they leave the house until the time they go back, and they leave them in a risk of infections and other issues that these menstrual pads usually give you. The other, I don't know, maybe some nice neighbor that is close to the school, and maybe the girls have some kind of relationship with the homeowner and they let them use the bathroom, which I highly doubt it. But those are the only scenarios that I can really think of how girls between ages 9 to 16 have to manage their menstruation, and let's say there is really not much dignity in there.
And then I had other things.
Often a case of the infrastructure being designed by men
who
haven't thought it through. I've had friends who've been in medical institutions in the UK where the bathroom doesn't have a bin. It just hasn't occurred to anyone because no one in charge is a woman.
Think about those things. Yeah,
and I should say, and I think it's worth saying, trans men also menstruate. The context that we're talking about is pretty exclusively cis women and girls for cultural reasons, but I do want to bring that up so that we can have mentioned it because it is important.
Some basic facts, sorry, just to jump in again. What is the population then of Isla Fuerte, and how many girls are you working with on this island?
So according to one of the community groups, they told me maybe 3 years ago, it was roughly 2,000 people, I believe. It has grown quite a bit. And there is a population of about 500 to 600 floating people, which means are either people from the island that live on the coast, in Cartagena, Medellin, Bogota, and they go back for holidays or stuff like that, or people like me, white people from the interior that have some kind of project, a hostel, a hotel, whatever it is, and they spend a lot of time in the island, but they are not from there. So they are the floating people. Unfortunately, I don't have the number of how many girls ages 9 to 16 in the island are. I don't have the number. But my group, we have roughly 35 girls. And I say roughly because I never know how many of them are going to show up on a given day. And they are ages 5 to 16, but they are divided into different groups. And the reason why I like to make the distinction is because when I first started the project, I was just going to work with girls ages 9 to 14, because that was my focus. But then, because at the beginning, I thought I was just going to go to the island, miraculously teach every single girl, and then I was just going to move on to another community. Clearly, that didn't happen, and it took me over a year for the people of the community to really trust what I was doing. And during that year, I just fell in love with the people on the island. So I stayed, obviously, in Isla Fuerte. And so when I first started it, my youngest girl was 12. And now she's going to turn 17 in December. And then I started I started at age 9. But then the little ones, the little girls, ages 5 to 6, 7, every time they see me, they're like, "Oh, Senor, like, when are you gonna start a group for us?" Like, I had never worked with little ones, like, I had no idea, but they just kept coming to the city. We had like a little house, like a little place where we meet, and they just start coming in. Every time I went down to the little house, they'd be like, "Hi, Senor, can we draw? Can we play?" So I was like, well, these girls are already coming to me. Some of them are the younger sisters of the older participants, and some of them just live in the vicinity. So I was like, well, I'm just going to start this group, not really knowing what I'm going to do with them. And so that's how Chiqui Fuertes started about a year ago. And our focus with Chiqui Fuertes is a little bit different. But once they hit at the ages 9 to 10, they would move to Las Fuertes to start the whole education a menstrual education program and everything else that we do on top of that.
What level do you find them at when you first bring them in? Do they have ideas that you have to correct, so to speak, or do they come with nothing and you're filling in the gaps?
I will say the majority have no idea. Most of them, so the ones that came to my group when they already had the menstruation, they had no idea what was happening. They didn't have any relation between fertility and menstruation. They couldn't name any part of their genital, besides the not so nice words that they use to name your vulva or your vagina and whatever. They didn't have any sense of protection or loving for their bodies. It was as if they were living outside their body. And through that, we also identify, how much reading is in a very low level, how much we need to develop other soft skills, such as something as simple as team building and communication, assertive communication. So yeah, like now, if you ask, for example, me ladies, who is the oldest one, how she sees herself through the process, it's a whole different person. I'm not gonna say everything is thanks to Las Fuertes, because that's not the case. But I think we have implemented a lot of good ideas and information for her to make better decisions. And that's to say for a good number of the girls that come to Las Fuertes.
Because to live in fear and suspicion of your own body is a deeply I think wounding way to live in your body.
Exactly.
And can create lots of these other problems and particularly I mean, I wonder where you think it comes from, this fear of girls knowing their bodies and these euphemistic words, and how you feel it can be broken to create this kind of empowerment that you're working towards.
It comes just because nobody ever told them that they are worth it.
Right.
It comes just because in my family never told me about like menstruation or what was going to happen on my first day or when my menarche came, which is the first menstruation.
Right.
As a grown up, I didn't know the difference between vulva and vagina until I started doing this, So I think it's a widespread misinformation, like I said, that permeates everything in society. It doesn't really depend on where you are geographically or how much money you make, because this lack of education is widespread. Yes, obviously higher educated people may have more access to it, but it doesn't mean that they actually know. Because I suppose
I wonder if it comes from a religious taboo or just a kind of cultural taboo around the body, or what do you think?
I think religious may have some say. I don't want to say how much because I really don't know. I grew up in a in a Catholic household, like pretty much every Colombian, and I don't think we were never told nothing about our body, not because of Catholic issues. It's just because they were never given that information, right? Like, for example, I don't think my mom was never told how to explain to her daughters what menstruation is. So it's just like something generational. Just as their grandma or my grandma didn't have any idea. It's just something naturally happens and you are I think this is one important thing. People assume that we know because it happens to us. I heard this I read it somewhere or heard somewhere that we are supposed to know because this happens to us. So automatically we are supposed to know what is going to happen when we have the menstruation, and that's definitely not the case. I think some social issues also have to do with it, just because the way of controlling the female body is by avoiding that they have some knowledge, right? And unfortunately, Colombia, as I don't want to say, but it's true, we live in a very machista society where men still want to have a very strong hold on women, and a very good way to control what women do and don't want to do with themselves is by controlling the access of education.
Completely. But I was in Guinea earlier this year, and I spoke to a woman who'd had a very strong ritualized idea of what menstruation was and meant, because in her community she was put in a cabin on the edge of the village for her first period and fed through a hole that was high enough up that she couldn't make eye contact with everyone, and she was only fed certain things. And as she emerged from the cabin, she was chased by a young boy who she later found out, if he had caught her, would have been able to marry her, let's say. So in some communities, there are like very structured understandings of what menstruation is and means. And in other parts, there's this silence that you talk about. Certainly, my very different experience of this growing up in England is that it was part of state education. It was compulsory that you were dragged in at 12 and shown a video and given a little pamphlet. So where does the Colombian state come into this? What are they doing and not doing?
So when I was in high school, we also have this talk. Some, like a big company came in and just gave out pads as we were told, here is what you use. I don't recall
that's marketing
anything.
Rather than education.
Exactly. But that's how
it was. We had the
multinationals. Exactly. For us, it's
which belongs to Procter & Gamble. Like, this is not a public service.
Exactly. So this is how they have also controlled the narrative, because it's just make us think that that's the only product available.
The only brand.
The only brand and the only product that we can use, right? So that's the first start, because that's the first contact that we have with menstruation is like, you use these pads. And if you think about commercials back in the day, the blow was blue. So it starts from there too. Until recently, until like 2 years ago, I think they started using
it's
red.
It's been laundry detergent. We've all been menstruating laundry detergent.
That's right,
for
in the advertising. That's
years.
it.
Yeah.
With the
so crazy.
The pad and then they're pouring like Clorox on it.
Exactly.
Basically,
like if your period's blue, you've got more problems than a leak, babe.
And actually, they just started using real blood to test the pads like a year or 2 years ago, before they used some saline solution. So the whole system, is very fabricated for us not to have access. But going back to the question about how the education system works into this. So when I went to a private school, and the only thing I remember, honestly, I was maybe in 9th or 8th, 9th grade, and nosotras came in, gave us a talk. I can't even remember what they said, and all I remember is that they gave us a pack of pads. That's it. I can't remember the year, but I know the Colombian Education Ministry. It is supposed to be part of the curriculum, and it does happen. So they do teach about menstruation in a very biological way, and it happens when most of the girls have already experienced menarche. So they are not preparing them for that, right? They are not coming in when they're 9 or 10. You know, it's happening maybe when they're 12 to 14. I don't know the order. I can't remember at what grade is supposed to be implemented, but I say from my girls, because I remember the oldest ones, right? They went to a biology class, and we don't talk about fallopian tubes. We call them uterine tubes. Trompas uterinas. We don't call them trompas de fallopian. I explain why. And I say rapidly, fallopian was an Italian scientist, doctor, that about 400 years experimented in women's bodies, and he discovered this part of our body and named them after him. So I teach this, right? This is part of the education. And one of my girls, she was like a year after into the program, and she had a biology class, and the biology teacher was talking about fallopian tubes, and she raised her hand and she said, "Teacher, sorry, that's not a proper way. We're supposed to use this." And even the teacher was like, "Oh, no, because fallopian tubes, that's how it is in the textbook." So even though there is some information given, and I'm not going to blame the teacher, because if this person has never been given this information, obviously the person is never going to know. But it's very strict, right? It's very constricted. It's very biological. It's like, this is what happens, and that's it. They don't prepare them to understand why we change emotionally, why we change the way what we think. They don't explain why we relate to the other people in a different way. And so, and by the time this education comes into place, like I said, most girls already are menstruating. So it's like, I'm not saying that it's not helpful, but obviously it needs to be done to prepare them to have a much more positive experience with their bodies and their cycle in general.
I think it can feel very pathologizing, this this biological vocabulary. And I remember the pamphlets we were given. It's like a list of names of hormones that were going to start rising in our bodies that meant nothing to me because I was 12. They would mean nothing to me now that I'm 34, because it's simply not my vocabulary and I don't understand science generally. It's extraordinary to speak to girls in that way. And, you know, when I was young, we talked about sanitary products and hygiene products. There was all this other stigma. Do you find that in the Spanish that's used around menstruation?
So we talk, people in the common, fields, whatever, if they talk about hygiene products and take care of you, and that's not how we talk about in Las Fuertes. We talk about dignified management of menstruation, of the menstrual cycle. We talk about making informed decisions and understanding your body. We're not talking about taking care of, because the girls don't know what they are taking care of, right? If you don't recognize your body as your territory, how are you going to take care of something that you don't know or you don't understand? So we talk more about the fact that once you have this information, you can make informed decisions. And this is from like, do I want to shave or not? To when do I want to have a boyfriend? Because I cannot decide for them, obviously, and I cannot force them to make decisions. I can only provide certain information, and from them, they can hopefully make better decisions for their lives. And going back to the hygiene and sanitation wording, it is very prevalent in Latin American countries in general. And I say this because right now I'm actually doing a fellowship that is based in Nepal. And the wording is exactly the same in the global south. Nepal, India, Africa in general is always talking about hygiene. And the reason for the listeners and for Richard, the reason why we don't use hygiene, the hygiene word sanitary is because that word stigmatizes our blood as something that is dirty, and that is something that has to be clean. Yes, of course we have to be clean, but not because the blood is dirty. And so we use the word managing, because we have to learn how to manage our menstruation with dignity. We don't have to take, we don't have to clean anything because it's dirty. Yes, obviously we have to shower and, do all the things to be presentable, but there is a very strong relationship between the menstrual taboo in general and the use of words as sanitary and hygiene.
Yeah, it's like that's what I mean about pathologizing. It makes you feel like you're sort of ill 4 days a month.
Exactly.
And you might feel bad, but this is a kind of natural, manageable cycle for most women. And it's very individual, I would say. And that must be a part of the education that you have to give, is encouraging women to understand their own cycles and choose their own products accordingly, right?
Exactly.
Because I looked up some stats and I was really interested by this. Some of them you sent over and I did some comparisons. So in Colombia, 93% of women use menstrual towels and only 11% use tampons. In the UK, it's something like 70% use tampons. And in Germany, it's a similar. So there are these real regional divergences in use. And again, as I was saying, the cup is still the reserve of, women like myself, effectively, if that wasn't clear from my description. I'm a cup. I'm a massive cup stan. But I also understand that it's not for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And that there's a lot that comes with the use of it that requires really getting in there with yourself and your blood. And like, no one who uses a cup that I know hasn't at some point had like a medium to large accident. And just kind of, it can be a high risk implement. However, how are we still having these amazing global divergences? Mexico's stats look to me closer to Colombians, whereas Brazil was somewhere more in the middle.
Okay.
In terms of tampons versus towels. And I wonder if you think there's a virginity taboo and anxiety around the hymen relating to products that go inside the vagina rather than in the underwear.
I think it's very, very related. And maybe this goes back to the religious standpoint from like Latin America in general. Because most of the, when we do these interventions, whether it's in the island or in other communities where we get the chance to go to, the question, when we start talking about like how to use a cup and that's actually this product, the first question that we always get is like, Senor, can I use that even though I haven't had my first, or I'm still a virgin? But, I explained the virginity is a whole social construct. But anyways, so instead of focusing on that, I think it's a very strong relationship between the idea of virginity, hymen, and being broken by a tampon or a cup. Because again, there is such a lack of information about how your body works in general. How it is, how is your body? What does it look like? And also because I think accessibility too. So it's easier to go in a rural town and find pads than a tampon. If you go in the middle of nowhere, you will always find pads. It's very hard for you to find tampons. And I think it's related to a social construct, religious beliefs, the lack of information about what a tampon is, how does it work. Obviously, cups are not even in the picture in rural communities. But it's a very strong relationship because it happens pretty much everywhere when we go and teach about menstrual products. It's always the question when we talk about tampons and menstrual cup. It's always that question of like, Senor, can I
it's
do
really interesting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember being. Sorry, Richard, you go.
I have some things I've never, you guys have been educating me. I've been sitting here listening and I'd never thought about the language, a sanitary towel, because it's unsanitary, I'd never ever thought about it. And I was thinking about small towns.
And I have a friend who gives it to her plants. She uses her cup. I won't name her, but she's glorious. She fertilizes her plants with her menstrual blood. And if you use a cup, I think you become more familiar with the idea that it's not unsanitary or that it's not dangerous, that it's blood like any other. There's some great old feminists. Am I about to quote Germaine Greer? I'm worried I am. I'm going to do it anyway. He said you're not a real feminist until you've tasted your own menstrual blood.
Oh, that's a little bit of extreme.
I think it was. It's pretty extreme, but I think it does speak to the kind of liberation that you're creating among these girls, which is, oh, we've lost Richard. I'm sure he'll come back. Which is bodily empowerment leading to social empowerment. And you say it's transformative, that these girls are coming out the other side.
Yeah, I mean, just for the girls that had come to the workshops and they haven't had demonstration, and then they eventually get it, right? The experience is completely different. Some of them have approached me and be like, "Ay, Senor, like honestly, like I wasn't prepared for it, but when I had it, I knew what it was. So it wasn't trauma. It wasn't a traumatic experience. You know, it wasn't something like completely out of like what is happening. It was like, oh, this is what Senor was telling us this whole time, right? It was like the realization of like, this is happening. And something very important too is that they understand they are still girls. Because another narrative that is very perpetuated is that the day that your menstruation arrives for the first time, automatically you turn into a woman. And that's such a big lie. And that also has a ripple effect on the lives of these girls. Because it's like, how are you going to tell a 12, 11-year-old that the day that you menstruate, you automatically like your mom, right? The way that carries on your shoulders of like, oh, if I'm a woman, then I have to do certain things women do, right? And that carries a lot of weight. And also clearly this has a lot of impact in their decisions. So yeah, like, and it's funny because I never thought myself teaching or talking about menstruation or menstrual cycles even 7 years ago when I was still in Madagascar. But it has really changed how I see life and how I see education in general, even for sexual education. It has to start with menstrual education before we can actually teach a girl where you want to use a condom or not, or who are you going to have your first sexual interaction with, you know, if you don't understand how your body works.
Because there are many cultures that tell you you're a woman when you first menstruate. And this woman who I spoke to in Guinea had very much been treated as though she was ready for marriage at 13. As she emerged from this first menstruation in the cabin. But do you find yourself in conflict with cultural beliefs? Have you had resistance as an outsider coming in and teaching things that maybe slightly affront the beliefs of Isla Fuerte's population?
So I haven't had the chance to work with indigenous tribes, which I think it will be a little bit more conflicting because I don't want to be a white woman. I don't consider myself white, but people, you know, because I'm from the interior. But if I was to go to Guinea, right, and teach what I teach, I will be perceived like, oh, the white woman from Bogota who's coming to teach us better because we don't know anything.
Yeah.
And it's a very thin line, and I haven't had the chance to do that. I hope at some point I do get to work with indigenous communities by combining both, saving the precious traditions from indigenous people, but also getting rid of the things that actually damage into the girls. I don't know if I ever will find a balance or the opportunity to do that. I think it would be very difficult.
There's an interesting debate to be had about cultural relativism versus just straight up human rights.
Exactly.
And
because
when you see the levels of child abuse and abuse of women happening in some indigenous communities under the guise of traditional practices, it is hard to believe the balance is currently being struck correctly. But as an outsider, it must be difficult to square yourself. Yeah.
The experience in the island is being a little bit different just because I have had a lot of support from the moms, especially because moms are like more present in the lives of their daughters. And they are very supportive. They are very improve what I do. And some of them have come to me and be like, thank you so much for providing information to my daughter. So we both are better prepared, right? The mother and the daughter. Because the daughter is also educating the mom on being like, hey, mom, you don't do this or you don't say that, things like this. And recently we had the chance to go to San Jacinto, Bolívar, a small town in the north of Bolívar.
Is that mainland?
Yes.
Yes, that's mainland.
Hammocks. Okay. Hammocks. San Jacinto.
Sorry, Richard?
Hammocks and gaitas.
Yes, los gaiteros de San Jacinto, yes. And we work with girls, adolescents, and women. And it was very, the reaction from the participants was incredible. Like, they were so thankful that we came with this information, because for the moms, it changed everything that they had always thought about menstruation and the menstrual cycle in general. Some of them were like, I never knew this, right? Like, they were like completely, their minds were like, I can't believe I was told this wrong my whole life. And for the little ones, for the very tiny ones, sometimes it's difficult for them to grasp what we're teaching, because maybe they are not prepared or they don't understand exactly. But maybe in a year or two, they will understand what we were teaching them a couple of years before. And then for the adolescents, they just saw themselves in a whole different way. I mean, in a 2-hour session, I'm not saying that we're doing miracles, because we are not a miracle workers. And I say we because I have a team of volunteers with me. But we try our best, and we do get a good feedback from what we're doing in general. To this point, I've never had a mom opposing or a family opposing, not to this point. Yeah.
Amazing.
I think
because I was seeing something on Twitter.
God.
And I say that because someone sent it to me. I'm not like out here scrolling on Twitter. I have friends who are like, this is terrible, look at this. And I'm like, this is precisely why I'm not on Twitter, and why you also should not be. But, there is still, even in the US, Republican discourse, which seeks to undermine the capacity of women to fulfill public function on the basis that we, quote unquote, go mad once a month. Yeah. And I think a lot of us, well before we had any sex education, were exposed to male stand-up comics and other such individuals making jokes about women on their period, right? Like the hormonal cycle of the period and the way that is treated culturally, and particularly by pop culture, brackets, late 90s male stand-ups and apparently Republican campaigners. How do you approach those elements? Because it's one thing to manage the blood element, but the actual hormonal cycle is something much more profound, I think, and experiential for most of us.
You mean with the participants?
Yeah.
Well, it's been really hard for me to teach that specifically, because since it's something that you don't see, right? Like it's not tangible. It's like, how I'm going to explain this? And we briefly talk about estrogen and progesterone, but we don't focus on the wording, because, like you said, it's pointless.
What does it mean?
Talk about, exactly. We talk more about like the experience itself, right? Like, for example, how you relate to your mother. So remember when you were 5 or 6, how you were then with your mom and how you are now with your mom. It's stuff like that. It's something that is more relatable to them. But it's really hard. Like, the toughest thing is to teach them about how emotionally we change, and to explain to them that we are not crazy and we are not ventiochudas. That's how in Spanish they call it ventiochudas.
Great word.
So supposedly your cycle is 28 days, right? So 28 from the 28 cycle. So we so we try to the best of our abilities to explain to them that there is going to be a shift during every phase of the menstrual cycle. And again, this is very hard for them to understand, because even as a grown-up, it's hard to understand it. But
and some people really experience it and others don't. And,
so at least we give them the notion, because it's really hard for them. I mean, I cannot guarantee that every single one of them is going to absorb everything we provide as far as information, but at least we give them a notion of what are like the generalities of what happens, how you feel when you are doing your menstruation days, or what happens when you are on your follicular, I don't know how you say it.
Follicular phase.
Or how do you feel, how your energy goes up during your ovulation days. So we give them like the generalities, but it's really hard to convey that, especially when you are 13 years old and you're combining puberty and menstrual cycle. Is this atomic bomb, right?
Just a whole new universe.
Exactly.
And there's so little understood, the scientific research on this stuff.
it's so little, but
and your
at
menstrual
least,
symptoms, being able to identify endometriosis symptoms as
right,
separate from menstrual symptoms. And, I've friends in our mid-30s only just getting diagnosed with endometriosis after 20 years of doctors
exactly.
being like, no, that's within the normal range of pain. That's a normal menstrual symptom.
Yeah. I mean, I
It's a
cannot
vague world.
say exactly. I mean, we are trying our best, especially for the little ones, and we give them a rate of information, right? A variety of information, and at least they know they are changing. Because even the girls themselves, the ones that are in the group, sometimes they they see their peers that are not in the group, and they can see some of the difference of like they are a little bit more aware of what's happening, right? Like they are more aware of like, oh, this is what I'm going through, and this is kind of what like Senor maybe have taught us before. So there is still like a notion out there. They are not going completely blind. It's not that we are going to be able to give them all the information and everything to experience it the best way possible. Well, we try our very best.
I'm going to blame
one thing that does need to be
comics.
said, super quickly.
Go on.
There are male leaders worldwide who are batshit crazy 28 days a month.
28?
So I don't want to see
30,
in the year of our
31.
Lord 2025
not just a leap month.
I don't want to hear that women might be crazy a couple days a month. Look who's out there running things.
Yes.
How many days a month are they crazy?
Every day.
Every day, not
Thank
just
you.
28 days.
Yeah, no, every day.
Yeah, whatever cycle these men are on, it's all the days.
It's something.
It's all of them.
It's the Tylenol they obviously took as a baby.
Really dangerous. That'll explain it.
Yeah. First thing I just think thank you, because now I'm remembering like lad comics from the 1990s. Like Ben Elton.
Right.
Ben Elton, who's a household name in England, a comic writer and so on.
Iconic.
And I mean, he read a very large part of his stand-up comedy was about women complaining after the smear test, for example. And then I remember, girlfriends referring to obviously the menstruation as the curse. These. Yeah, these things cannot be repeated now. And then of course in Argentina is the word la mancha, so like the stain.
Yes.
And you're like, come on, this has to change. And then you will bring up, I'm going over everything you've said. Of course, I didn't know that it was anything other than a fallopian tube, because that's what I learned in science, because that's what it is. It's a fallopian tube. Yeah. I mean, this is the truth. And then, Emily, you brought up endometriosis just now. I'd only heard of that for like 10 years ago, the first time ever.
Yeah,
and I'm very close to 50.
We're so behind on it. We're so behind on it.
Yeah.
And the way that our menstrual symptoms are treated by male doctors is so dismissive when sometimes there is something else going on.
Yeah, and I just think
it's really dangerous.
It's shocking. Yeah, so can I say thank you to you guys? I kind of wish I'm going to have to teach my sons now. I'm going to have to give them a bit of a background into this very carefully, but I won't.
There's some children's books on this, actually Colombian ones. There's one called Princesas Menstruantes.
Oh yeah, they're actually from Medellin. Yes.
Yeah, I interviewed them, and they have some really gloriously graphic princesses bleeding everywhere, illustrated in their books.
Yeah,
and I just rate it, because I think while calling it the stain is bad, the way that we've been advertised to makes us so profoundly paranoid about any stain.
Yeah,
a lot of which would be a perfectly natural result of multiple days of heavy bleeding.
To point a little bit of the wording, so there is a lot of talk about like menstrual poverty, which is something a terminology that I don't use for many reasons, but I think it's important to mention that the euphemisms that are always related to menstruation is also one of the big causes of why we have such a bad relationship with our menstrual cycle in general. Because using euphemisms like that, like la mancha, it's like you're already stigmatized 5 days out of the month for 40 years. So imagine the side effect that has on you and your surrounding, right? Just to say one of the many euphemisms that are out there, and every country changes, right? Like from Madagascar to Argentina, every country has a different euphemism to talk about something that is so natural, like breathing. I always say that, like, because we menstruate for over 4 years, and more than half of the population in the entire planet are menstruators, where girls, adolescents, women, no transgender men, what is it called?
Non-binary people.
Non-binary people. Thank you.
Yeah.
So it happens every single day, right? But it's something that we still are so afraid to talk about, and we use the most horrible words to describe a very human experience. And I think that Carolina from Fundacion Las Fuertes is the one that talks about human experience, because it's something that happens to all of us. Men experiences for a different reason, right? Guys are here thanks to menstruation. Women have to live with it for a very long time, yet it's so weaponized and so stigmatized in ways that we don't even perceive, right? And even before I start talking about this, I never questioned myself. I never imagined like I would be talking about this, because I didn't have a close relationship with my cycle. I hated it. I remember when I was little, I wanted to be a boy because I thought it was easier, right? It was like, oh, you're the tough one, and you just go and kick balls and like do what the boys do, and I thought it was easier, right? And it took me 30 plus years to understand that is the very essential part of who that makes us female. So it's very important to change the narrative.
I have one more phrase that I've heard on the Caribbean coast for someone someone having sex before no se le perjudicó.
Se le perjudicó, yes.
She was prejudiced, sort of thing. It's like she before marriage. This was back in the day, but they called it se le perjudicó.
Oh no, it still happens.
I know.
It still happens.
I heard that. It was like,
yes.
I was like, we can't use this language. We can't use this language.
And it matters.
Yes.
It really matters
a lot.
Yeah. Karol, how can we help, or how can our listeners get in touch or help? I think you have a GoFundMe page.
Actually, it's not a GoFundMe. We actually have very good news. We have a fiscal sponsor in the States. So it's an NGO registered in the States called Caring for Colombia, and we are partnered with them. So if anybody wants to support our mission, I can share the link with you, Richard. Maybe you can add it to the podcast, and people just go there and they actually get their donation certificate for tax purposes from Caring for Colombia. And they choose if they want to give us like a one-time thing or a monthly, we call them inversiones sociales, social investment. So you can give us like a monthly social investment or once in every blue moon. You can also follow us on Instagram at las.fuertes. Our page is on the works, our official webpage. So hopefully by this December 2025, it will be alive, and it will be lasfuertes.org. And if anybody wants to get in touch with us, you can email us at fundacionlasfuertes@gmail.com, and then we'll be more than happy to reply to your messages. Those are the ways that you can support us, reach us. We are starting to expand our program, so we're focusing on rural and hard-to-reach communities. But we are also very excited to go wherever people are willing us to take us, because this needs to be taught everywhere, not only in Isla Fuerte, but it's a tough job, but we are trying to do our best.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you. I feel that I know a little bit more. A little bit more about something I should definitely know more about.
I mean, two sons is hardly, a kick up the arse to learn about it, but they've got to know.
They got to know.
Because I remember what boys are like when our period started, and it didn't make it any easier. So to have the support of your male peers during that period is also
my older
experience is very different. Yeah. And eventually they will have girlfriends or a wife or daughters, right? They are surrounded by women all the time, and something that needs to be done. But again, like I said, that's why we haven't started working with boys, because the approach is very different. You guys are more like from a support system kind of point, and we are from the experience itself. But boys definitely need to learn that it's nothing to be afraid of, that you have to run away from your girlfriend that has a menstruation, that is menstruating. It's just very natural.
I think my 5-year-old's closest to getting a girlfriend and getting married. The 10-year-old is very much, but he's more sensitive. The 10-year-old maybe would listen more, but the 5-year-old's certainly more advanced.
Oh yeah, the 5-year-old is a little bit harder to. Actually, the 10-year-old is just on time because most of his classmates are probably hitting puberty right now, and within a year or two are going to start experiencing the menarche. So yeah.
Well, Karol, Emily, both of you, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Karol. That was so fascinating.
Yes, definitely. So everyone, I will put up all the links on our Facebook and on various social media to Karol's foundation, Las Fuertes. Help out if you can, get in touch if you can, and of course, just listen, because I think that's the key thing here, isn't it? Listening as well and learn.
Yes.
So yes, thank you both.
We need to learn a lot of things to learn new things.
Yeah, of course.
And thank you both of you for this platform. I really appreciate it. I always get very excited when I get to
Diego.
talk about Yes, Diego Moore.
Diego Moore, thank you for putting us in touch. Yes. I've been talking to Karol Lopez. Emily Hart has been here as well. Well, they've been talking. I've been listening. And this has been the Colombia Calling podcast. Thank you again, everyone. And be sure to subscribe, post, share, help, and come back again next week for further interviews about Colombia. Great show. Thank you again. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Have a great